When I was 2 years old, my dad and my grandfather were building this motorized toy car for me. And I really wanted to help out, but they said I couldn't, saying I was too young. And as they were approaching the end of building the vehicle, they realized that there was a missing piece, a bolt. And after a considerable amount of time of looking for it, my dad had this grand idea to ask me if I knew where it was. And that's when I reached into my pocket and opened my 2-year-old hand, and there it was, the bolt that was missing. And even then, I didn't want to just be part of the final output. I wanted to be part of the process to get there. And that's kind of how I've always approached life. And that brings me to who I am now, 20 years later. I'm Nadia Higgins, a 2025 mechanical engineering graduate from Prairie PVAMU University and an engineer at Toyota. And I've always had a lifelong curiosity in the process. And that curiosity led me from childhood to engineer and eventually developing an interest in Formula One. So when I was in my sophomore year of college, I got a phone call from 7-time Formula One world champion Lewis Hamilton. Well, it wasn't him, it was his PR team who reached out to our university. But anyway, these details don't matter. So when I got an email from Lewis Hamilton asking if I wanted to participate in a Formula One weekend, I immediately jumped on the opportunity. Because Lewis Hamilton is an extraordinary outcome, but not necessarily a widely reproducible one. Because he is the only Black Formula One driver ever. And even at that, less than 1% of Formula One employees are Black. And during this weekend, several different schools and students were invited, and we had to participate in this case competition. And the whole goal of the case competition was to identify barriers that minorities face when getting into motorsports. And the main barriers that students identified were lack of access to opportunities and lack of access to money. So after the weekend, I returned back to my university, and I realized that we represented the core issue addressed during that weekend, because Prairie View is 84% Black, and at the time, we had no automotive opportunities on our campus. So, as a lover of the process and an only child with only child syndrome, believing that I am capable of anything, I decided Nadia Higgins, was going to bring and start an automotive organization on our campus. Problem was, I had no clue how to do that. And I also had no automotive experience. But as I learned in school, when solving for unknown variables, you have to solve for X. And X in this situation was the step between where I was, a student at a university with no automotive opportunities, and where I wanted to be, a student at a university with automotive opportunities. And X isn't alone, it's part of an equation. An equation can be broken down into two different parts, in my opinion: your outcome and your process. And so your outcomes are known as your ideas, your North Stars, what you want to do, and your process is known as the steps and the strategies and the operations to get there. But the problem is, most situations in life feel a bit like this. A little complicated. Everybody knows how to solve this, right? But it can be broken down into those two foundational parts: your outcome and your process. And so in my situation, the equation that I wanted to solve, I had to take the first step. And that first step was defining my outcome, what I wanted to do. And so I decided in sophomore year of college to provide motorsports opportunities to students. And so as you can see, half of the equation is solved, but arguably the most complicated step is still unknown, and that's the process to get there. And so the first thing I did was define my set. And so your set is what you have, right? And so in my situation, the set that was available to me was the Prairie View campus resources, the student body, the administration, and a very, very small budget. But the next question was, what do I do with this? And that's what operators are. They're actions that create movement. And in math, those are known as addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. But in life, it's what you choose to add. It's what causes growth. And so now that I have my set and my operators, the next question was, what do I do with it? And this first opportunity came from an elementary school day. So the College of Engineering was hosting over 500 elementary students at the university. And when the elementary students came, they were going to stop by different booths. And each booth, they were supposed to experience a different part of engineering. And so I felt like this was the perfect opportunity to start something, literally anything. I didn't know quite what to do, but I used my set. And so I went to a local go-kart facility and I asked them, and they allowed me to borrow some helmets and some flags. Luckily, wasn't expecting that. And then I took some pictures from the Formula One weekend and I put them all into a table because I wanted it to be interactive. And I didn't quite know what I was doing, but I just tried something. I took the operator of action. And during the day, the students were so excited. They were running up, they were trying everything, they were touching all the pictures, and they kept asking, how can I do this too? And that one moment turned into something bigger, because after that, we started doing high school recruitment days, and then we were partnering with different organizations, and then we were working with Girl Scouts, and then eventually, as I was graduating, we established an automotive garage right here on campus. And somewhere within all of that, the club formed under the name Vroom. And as I took a step back, I realized that we were doing exactly what operators are meant to do, using what you have and turning it into a movement. And so during that Formula One weekend, I was exposed to multi-million-dollar vehicles and F1 drivers and so many different opportunities. And what I wanted to do at my university was take that same type of exposure and break it down to other levels. So first we started with our preschoolers, where we used Hot Wheels to explain how height can affect speed. And then we moved on to our elementary schoolers who have a little bit more comprehension, where we use these motorized vehicles and cups to understand how vehicle dynamics are affected by surface area. And then when we used our college students, we actually went to automotive mechanic garages where they were able to do oil changes and tire rotation. And we broke down a transmission to understand the physics behind it. And so we just took that same exposure and we were able to show it to so many different levels of students. And before I knew it, we were addressing that core issue addressed during that case competition, which was bridging minorities to opportunities in motorsports. Because as y'all may know, and as I said earlier, less than 1% of Formula One employees are Black. But in the US, most Black students who graduate high school do go to college. And 3 out of 5 who start in a STEM degree finish in a STEM degree. And trickling down from that, about 4% of undergraduate engineering degrees are earned by Black students. So the issue isn't ability or potential, it's access to opportunities and the process. So whenever you look at Lewis Hamilton, that's an outcome that feels a bit out of reach. But when students have access to opportunities such as working on vehicles or building an automotive program, it all seems a bit more possible. And so with that process comes learning and mistakes. And that's kind of the issue with AI, is because it gives you access instantly without going through the process. But the process is where those mistakes happen. That's where the learning happens. And for example, when we first started the organization, we had the idea to build a Formula One model car with cardboard, styrofoam, and $650. That did not work at all. I don't know what we were thinking. You cannot build a Formula One car with cardboard, styrofoam, and $650. But when we had to go back to the drawing board and through multiple arguments and going back and trying to figure out what to do next, we were able to create something that did work. And that served as the foundation to our organization. Because whenever you have access to the process, that allows you to know what you can do and what you're capable of. And so behind me are examples of ideas that other people brought to life. And I know everyone in this audience has an idea or a problem that they want to solve. But the issue is always, how do you execute that? And that brings me back to the beginning of this presentation where I defined your outcome and your process. Your outcome is what you want to do, and your process is how you get there. And how you get to the process is defining your set, what you have, and using your operators to create something to do with it. Because at the end of the day, whatever idea you've been holding on to, you just need to define it, work with what you have, take action, and refine along the way. Because at the end of the day, every solution that you're trying to attain comes from a process of relentlessly and continuously solving for X. Thank you.